Hello, and nice meeting you all here as part of Security Day IL 2022. I will be showing you a cool presentation of my work and a great thing for general knowledge. My name is Alex Peleg. I'm the Chief Visionary Officer at Synergy. I'm also a hacker, and today we are going to speak about what happens when you put the single sign-on in the wrong hands. The agenda for today is to learn about single sign-on. We will try to understand why it's interesting for hackers. We'll discover possible hacks that can be done on single sign-on mechanisms. We will review some edge cases that I found not long ago. So what is a single sign-on? Single sign-on is a one login mechanism instead of multiple login mechanisms that can be used as part of an organization to log in to SaaS applications. Once you establish one login mechanism, you will be able to log in to multiple applications in different domains of the organization and in different paths that not always associated to the specific organization that you are coming from. Just a simple example, if you're trying to go to Facebook.com, once you authenticate with Facebook.com, you are able to authenticate to mobile Facebook.com and Facebook.com. This is very easy to implement, basically by creating a cookie. That the cookie will say that everyone that accesses from a top-level domain of Facebook.com can access the resources. But what happens when you are logged into Facebook.com, but you want to allow anyone from the domain messenger.com also to access? Instead of trying to establish additional login, this is why we have the single sign-on. So if we'll try to understand the process, so the first thing that happens is the user tries to access the application. There is a request that is sent to an identity provider, mostly in the cloud. The identity provider then identifies the user and creates a SAML response and send it back to the application. And then the application verifies the SAML response and logs in the user. So why is it interesting for hackers? Basically, if you hack SSO, you can log in then to any SaaS application which is associated to the organization. You can get a permissive access to specific web locations that you were not be able to access without. And sometimes there are locations that if you're not having this initial access, then you're totally blocked. And most of the times, once you have hacked a single sign-on, you'll be ending up with an access to sensitive information or privileged information, PII, etc. There are many types of possible hacks against single sign-on. The most obvious hack is leak credentials reuse. If there are credential leaks due to a hack, due to a phishing attack, and there is no two-factor authentication configured, no multi-factor authentication, then these credentials can be used in order to hack multiple applications that are using inside the same organization. Now, what is great is that most of SSOs now, or most of the organization now, require multi-factor authentication in order to access privileged data. So it's something that I think becomes a standard or a best practice for many organizations. The second hack that is possible is a group of hacks, which is called the SAML XML injection, where there are two types of possible injections. The first one is called an attribute injection, where as part of the XML attributes, you can inject a specific request and response that will try to put you in a different context. So if you're trying to authenticate as an low privilege user, maybe you can change your context to a higher privilege or administrative user. And the second injection, again, as part of these XML injections, which is a specific case of XXC, is the in response to. So in response to field as part of the XML, you may try to inject also your content. Whoever wants to read more about SAML XML injections can read it via a very nice use case that was identified by NCC. The third thing that you can do in order to hack SAML or SSO is SAML misconfigurations. In order to pass a specific SAML, there are verifications or there are signatures. So sometimes the signature does not exist or is not validated or not verified by the server side. Sometimes a signature is only verified when it exists, so you can just send a request without the signature. There sometimes are predictable signatures, and there are sometimes that the encryption that is used in order to generate the encryption is weak. But there are also several edge cases, and this is why I wanted to speak with you today. By the way, there are two recent CVEs of authentication bypass associated to SSO hacks. The one is the Microsoft authentication bypass, and the recent one is the Zoho Managed Engine authentication bypass that transformed to a remote code execution. So it's super interesting to understand how they were done. Today, I want to speak about the specific edge case that was identified by myself not long ago. And it all started when I was trying to understand the possible way to get into an organization. And the whole organization was very strictly protected by single sign-on. So every place where you wanted to try or get in to a specific web location as part of the organization, you needed to have some kind of authentication and authorization. One of the interfaces that the organization had exposed was create a new account interface, but this create new account was for external users. Okay, this is not something that they use for inside the organization. So I created the new user for this support field, changed the passwords, and followed the normal user creation process. Now, I told you that most of the modern organizations have something that is necessary in order to get the access to specific content, and this thing called the multi-factor authentication. So the next thing that I needed to do in order to access the organizational network is to create a multi-factor authentication. I have identified the mechanism that is used in order to generate the multi-factor authentication and followed the Microsoft multi-factor authentication registration form, and I created the authentication via the Microsoft authentication. Okay, so what did I end up with? I end up with access to a very non-privileged user as part of the organization. I'm an external user. I don't have any access. Yes, I can get to the Office 365 panel, but I don't have any applications associated with it. So I started thinking outside the box, and something that is common to Microsoft users is the ability that every Microsoft user has access to the Azure portal. And it's by default, so everyone can try to log into Azure and create some play with some stuff inside Azure. So I signed into Azure portal, and one of the things that are cool with the Azure portal is that you can allow yourself to switch contacts between different directories of the organization. And once I had the multi-factor authentication established, I discovered that I have the ability as part of the directories and the subscription of Azure to switch the context. So I was able to switch my context as part of my external organization to the internal organization. And basically, once I had it, I had access to the whole organization. So this is a super cool use case where, as an external user, which follows the normal path of registration to an organization, following the normal registration flow of SSO, can basically not break the SSO, but use it in order to gain higher privileged access to the organization using some business logic. I think that this must bring lots of questions regarding the specific path, and of course the organization is super interesting. So if you have any questions regarding the attack flow, or how was I able to discover this registration login phase, is you can basically ask your questions and I will be very glad to answer. You can contact me via my email, and I want to wish you all good luck.